There is a place famous for rumors of time standing still. A shepherd girl vanished with her flock, returned years later unchanged, and strange faces bloom in photographs. This is Hoia Baciu, west of Cluj-Napoca, where a bald round clearing throws compasses off. The air bites with resin. A metallic tang sits on my tongue. The insect hum feels pressed down. They warn you not to trust the trails when the woods go silent, not to step into the circle when the air turns colder than the night. I had slipped off the blazes, as if the forest tugged me. The flashlight still burned, the insects cut out. My watch crystal turned faintly tacky, as if a hand pressed from the inside. I didn't know then I'd entered the most terrifying hours of my life. The red square on old bark is easy to trust until the air thins and cools, and the insect hum narrows to a thread you could pluck. My light washes tea-brown trunks and a path scuffed by other boots. Resin hangs at the back of my tongue, sour sweet, a faint metallic bite folded in. I count breaths to keep bearing. The woods don't move, they simply lean. A low arch repeats ahead, same lichen bruise, same knot like an eye. I slow without deciding. Beside my prints, fresher ones nearly my size, toe scuffs kissing inward. Off to the right, the dented bin lid waits as if it never left, the same shallow crescent catching the beam. The night tastes faintly of iron. The round clearing should be behind me, yet the ground ahead pales to bare grit ringed by trunks like a low amphitheater. Grass thins there, a bald patch in a forest that grips everything. My breath feathers white once, though the night is damp and mild. I backstep until leaf litter crunches again. The ring drops from sight like a coin turning. The compass drifts as if tipsy, finds north, wanders, corrects, and proposes a direction that would send me through a fallen trunk I can touch. I pocket it. The phone's glow brightens, dims. The battery claims 91, then 92. Seconds jump, return, reorder. The screen feels warm against the cold on my knuckles. It smells of wet bark and cold iron where the path tightens. Hair-like fibers snag the back of my hand when I steady myself, an itch arriving before I notice it. Dust in the beam floats, stalls, then floats the other way, as if the air reversed. Beyond the throw, the understory rustles and stops. The sound is only me. I cross a temperature seam without warning. Skin pebbles. The air is the inside of a freezer for a blink. The insect drone slackens, a finger settling on a spinning coin. The quiet isn't absence, it's attention. I hold still. A gnat ticks my cheek, and the world lets go of its breath. I pick a new line because I need one. The ground tilts, thinks better, levels. The dented lid appears again from a slightly different angle. The same smear of mud darkens its rim like a thumbprint. I didn't circle. I tell myself that. My mouth dries anyway, a wick drawing from the tongue. Under a branch, I recognize by the scrape on my hood. The clearing sits again, not nearer, not farther, simply there, as if an eyelid opened on it. My breath makes no plume now, but the taste is suddenly resinous with a copper thread. The headlamp flares for a heartbeat, then settles as if a hand passed over it without shadow. The quiet drops like a lid set gently on a jar. It holds long enough for 6 counts. The fabric whisper of my sleeves, the click of the strap when I turn my head. On 7, a leaf rolls somewhere behind me, deliberate. The lid lifts, the night rushes back slightly too loud, a crowd resuming after a held moment. I toe the ring and lift away, then step fully inside and out again, a cautious test of heat. The soil is fine grit, not powder. It grips and lets go the way a dry tongue does. There's a drag without weight, like gum film on a sole. Returning to leaf litter, my boot crunches louder than it should. I refuse the center. I decide to skirt the rim. My decisions feel like moving furniture in a room already arranged. Ahead, two trunks lean toward each other in a suggestion of a gate. Not over me now, but over where I will be if I keep this pace. I shorten my steps as if stepping aside from a hand. Near the bark, the smell of resin thickens. A bead threads to my fingertip when I touch a golden seam. It shines, clings, stretches, and snaps with no sound, leaving a tack I can't rub away on fabric. Grit puckers under my jacket when I wipe. The itch under my watch band wakes like a small burn. Something small crosses the path between blinks. Body or leaf, I can't name it. I inventory what does exist. The elastic whisper of the headlamp strap, my breath, heel-toe cadence, and then a half step that is not mine, near enough to feel the ground accept it. I stop. The extra step lands anyway and doesn't repeat. The lock screen reads 22.41. The second ticks twice, then once backward, then ducks into place like a child caught. My thumb hesitates above unlock. A slow draft runs along my ankles against the direction of the wind. A cool stream flowing uphill. The hair on my shins lifts with no breeze. I go to the lid. The metal is colder than the air, the kind of cold the skin can name by degree. I knock once with a knuckle. The dull note hangs longer than it should. The forest seems to listen. When it fades, the insects don't resume right away. The pause tastes like copper. My zipper tab clicks while I walk, a metronome to argue with. I count trees to break the mirror of everything. At 37, the grove opens to the circle again. Too clean, too careful, as if someone swept it and ironed the dirt. The beam flattens on the surface like light on water, then lifts slightly as if the ground breathed. I drift the rim carefully. The air warms 2 degrees, cools 3, and does not mix. My breath is invisible, yet I can hear the wet swallow in my throat. My palms sweat, and the cold makes it feel borrowed, as if I'm wearing a glove a size too small that doesn't belong to me. A thought arrives already halfway done. Go straight. I go straight because not doing it feels like standing still. The path decides it is a path again. Twigs break under the ball of my foot instead of the heel, a tiny wrong note climbing the bone. The smell shifts to basement. Wet concrete, rust, fruit going sweet, then dead. I picture the last red blaze and pull it closer with the picture. It appears scar bright on old bark, corners lifting. It isn't ahead. It's to my left, level with the eye as before. Paint still shiny in the beam as if not finished. The feeling of being humored is brief and sour. Footprints wait at the base. Mine, probably. But the right toe scuffs inward, a habit I don't have. A pine needle lies inside one print, head pointing forward, stem pointing back. A tidy arrow for a gate I don't recognize. I reach for my wrist before I realize my hand is moving. The watch face is a dull coin, milked by the beam. I lift it. Breath clouds the crystal and clears. Where the strap touches skin, a fine grit catches like sand under a bandage. Low on the glass, 3 narrow crescents glisten, as if drawn with syrup. I touch one. It threads to my fingertip, cool, tacky. The smell sharpens metallic, resin spliced with iron, sap that has learned a new taste. I press my thumb to wipe the marks, expecting a smear. They rise with my thumb and halt. Not like dirt relocating, but like something tugging toward my skin and choosing not to arrive. The arcs curve inward. They are not cuts, not scratches. They cool as I watch, like glue flashing from clear to dull. A tiny pull lives where the band meets the wrist. The grain of grit, now a seed pressing back. Insects recede again, but I can hear the quiet itself, a fine pressure needle straight. I tell myself I went left. I tell myself the scuffs are mine, and the clearing only looks the same because circles do that. When I lower my hand, the arcs on the crystal align exactly where a hand would be if it were pressed from the inside. Fingers turn toward my pulse. The lid sets. I do not move. Between the red blaze and the dented lid, there is a path that doesn't belong to me. I lift my eyes and choose anyway, straight through trunks that lean a degree closer than before. Cold gathers at my shins. The taste of resin goes full metal, like pressing a battery to the tongue. I keep the watch turned outward and walk. The watch band still presses a grain of grit into my skin, a faint tack where the crystal once held those crescent marks. I keep the face turned outward like an eye I don't want meeting mine. Resin rides the air, sweet then metallic, and a cooler current slides along my shins, upstream of the wind, then stops exactly at bone. I count breaths to steady the line, but the forest prefers me counted by other means. The dented bin lid waits from a new angle, the same bruised crescent catching my beam. When I touch the metal, it is colder than the night by a logic of its own, and the insects stall as if listening. My knuckles' dull tap hangs a shade too long. I think the hush deepens. No, it just comes closer. The way someone might lean in until they share your breath. The round clearing does not follow. It arrives. Where I put my eyes, a blank, careful disc ringed by trunks that lean a degree toward it. Leaf litter whispers under my boots. Resin tastes copper bright at the back of the tongue. Breath cools the teeth, makes no plume. The watch band warms against the skin as the ankles cool, two temperatures refusing to mix. The headlamp's elastic strap clicks when I turn. Cataloged, click, breath, grit shifting in the right boot. And then a half step not mine, set down half a beat off, close enough that the ground accepts it. It does not repeat. Its idea remains where it landed. The ankle draft returns and traces the sock line like a careful hand beneath cloth. My phone wakes on its own to the lock screen at 23:02, the second tick stumbling forward twice, then back once, then righting itself like a guilty child. I don't unlock. From the dark ahead comes a dry shutter click, thin as a fingernail against glass. The echo is wrong for open woods. It has room corners in it. I keep the beam low. I number trees because bark is safer than ideas. At 7, I doubt whether I said 6. At 10, my mouth says 9 twice. The error sits on my tongue like a coin. I start over. A cold pocket climbs from ankle to knee with slow patience, pauses at the hinge, and drains away only when I back a step I didn't choose. A red trail blaze gleams wet in the beam, though the paint is old. Beneath it, prints match mine until they don't. The right toe turns inward, a habit my bones reject. Inside one print, a single pine needle points forward, stem back, a neat arrow for a gate I don't own. The itch under the watch band rises like heat without fire. I flick the crystal with a fingernail. The edge gives a tiny tack and then cools. Under the strap, skin stipples as if pressed through mesh. The resin odor thickens until it becomes taste. The metallic thread curls tighter, more battery than tree. I keep the watch face turned away, as if that denies the idea of anything on the inside. The path corrugates, smooths, corrugates again in the same pattern, a rhythm learned rather than walked. A low bough finds the scrape it left on my hood. When I duck, a shutter click lands 2 beats closer than I expect, and the headlamp breathes brighter once and subsides. The insects miss a beat, resume slightly off time. I pull the phone because not looking feels worse. The gallery opens under my thumb like someone else taught it. On the screen, the clearing, framed at a lower height than my shoulder, horizon line dropped, as if held by shorter arms. The timestamp is a minute behind now. I tilt the beam toward my back and watch my own light right trees. I raise the phone to match trunks to trunks. The photograph's angle sits half a step behind me. My beam throws no figure in the space the camera requires. Cold clay breathes up between my teeth. I listen for air that isn't mine, and hear only mine tried on by the woods, as if the forest is testing the fit of my chest. I back 3 steps without turning, counting grit drags in the boot to catch a partner count. On the 3rd, silence is laid over the clearing like a cloth. No hum, no strap tick, no leaf skitter, only intent. The hush presses the tongue against the palate. The phone screen warms my palm without brightening further. A name comes to the mouth, thin and baseless, and dies under the lid. Heat pools at the watch while the ankles burn cold, temperatures separated by a line the air refuses to cross. I think I see a shape between 2 trunks. No. It's an arc of lichen finding my beam. A single leaf turns and rests as if choosing a side. I try a cut between 2 young trunks joined like a forked finger. Soil there is sifted fine, the pellets of beetles smoothed flat. A pale resin thread bridges a twig to a rock and quivers with no wind, then stills. When I pass, it snaps without sound and prints tack on my pant leg that I cannot rub away on bark. Another shutter click, closer to the left ear, intimate as a hinge. The gallery flinches to a new image with no animation, just present. The clearing again, the dented lid barely visible at the edge, a dark stripe across the dirt as if a hand had been between lens and ground. My beam shows nothing crossing the light. Thirst arrives like a thought rather than a need. The flask clinks in the pack. That ordinary sound acts like a match head, and the insects return too loud for 1 second, then correct. The ankle draft retreats as if drawing a boundary. The metallic taste sharpens on the tongue. The headlamp stops breathing brighter. At the bin lid, I crouch to prove the last photo wrong. The dent is real. The mud crescent is real. The chill is the same precise degrees below air. When I lift my glove, a thin smear of resin glosses the knuckle, gathered from nowhere I intended. I wipe it on bark. It leaves a print that smells like iron filings in sap. I loosen the strap a notch, and the skin beneath shows a fine stipple, not rash so much as pattern. The crystal is clear. No crescents now, only the memory of where they were. Warmth under the band grows as the ankle cold lifts, like the forest breathed in and exhaled me to a different depth. I feel looked at from the wrong side of skin. I plan to speak to break the loop, but the lid falls and the first syllable dies in it. 6 counts hold. At 7, a twig snaps tidy behind my left heel. I turn only my head. The beam paints bark and distance, nothing between. The gallery does not update, but the screen's warmth increases as if it expects praise. The trunks ahead lean with familiar patience, furniture nudged back after being moved. I picture the trailhead, the salt dust smell, the car fan ticking. picture is a rope I pull. The forest trades me a few clean steps for the thought and asks back a pocket of quiet. The rule sharpens. Distance is bought with hush. The phone slips into my pocket because I cannot watch two versions of the world. The ankle draft uncoils up the calves, settles along the inside of the legs as if considering how to wear me. Resin thins to loam for 3 breaths, returns with the copper thread drawn tight. The lamp hum is felt in teeth rather than heard. Shadow scallops across the circle's edge. Beyond it, the dirt is darker, almost glazed. I test the rim with a toe, the gum film drag, then release, an adhesion without weight. Silence offers its hand, but doesn't take mine. If I cross now, I'll be seen. No, not seen. Weighed and found acceptable for some use I don't want named. A red blaze appears at a height that makes sense for my eye, and wrong for whoever took the last picture. I stand under it and catalog sound. Zipper tick, breath, and a thin radio hiss from the phone hunting a signal. The hiss grows when I turn from the circle and fades when I face it. It is a map that only exists at the edge of hearing. I test the map, face the clearing, hiss dim, turn aside, hiss louder. It feels like an unplugged speaker that hums only when the stage is dark. The draft winds once around my left boot and climbs to the watch as if the path remembers where to end. Under the strap, a single pulse answers from the skin, not the heart. The idea of eyes lives at wrist height, inside the band. I keep my hands in view of my own beam. A shutter click taps from the circle farther now, as if a corridor extends. The gallery stays still this time. I hold the light steady and do not grant it the angle it wants. The hiss softens, pleased, like a cat that has your place on the couch. A moth smacks the lens and leaves a bright comma, then folds back into dark. The ordinary motion resets my borders for a breath. I count up to 10 and feel 9 try to repeat. I force 10 to settle. Resin odor yields to damp loam. The air warms at the throat while the ankles keep cold. A 2-story weather I wear. After the next lid, the insects resume a half-beat off my steps, like an echo that lost its mark. The trunks seem to lean less, or I stand correctly inside their pressure at last. I think the dented lid is behind me. When I glance back, it is where it shouldn't be, and I decide not to touch it again. My prints near it multiply when I try to count them. I take the cut that isn't on any map between 2 bleached bowls whose bark has slackened like old skin. The ground tilts under a hand and then denies it. The radio hiss rises when I turn my back to the circle and dims when I face it. A negative lighthouse. I walk by that hum because it is the only rule that keeps paying out steps. Each step lands half a second after my bones expect it, a delay felt in knees and teeth. I keep the watch turned outward and let the strap breathe. The ankle cold paces me like a low companion, never touching, always level with the bone. When the lid falls again, it sets lightly, as if I've learned enough to be trusted with its timing. At the edge of throw the clearing declines to follow, and the path in front consents to be path. The hiss steadies to a thread. I carry the sense of being watched without offering it a face to fill. Before I move faster, I check the crystal one last time. Clear glass, no arcs. Only that gentle pressure beneath, a palm thinking through skin. The radio hiss fattens when I face away from the clearing and thins toward nothing when I turn into it. I keep my wrists where I can see them, the watch face turned outward, the band feeding a low pressure into skin like a thought. Resin hangs sweet, then turns metallic, as if the trees learned iron. cooler draft settles at ankle height and waits, steady as a leash slackened but not dropped. Orbs bloom between trunks at shoulder height, coin-sized, milk-pale, pinned. Not fireflies. They don't drift. My beam crosses one and the light passes through a thin milk without moving it. Leaves shiver to a wind that the orbs ignore. The insect hum dips, returns, but off by half a tone, like a choir after a cough. I taste nickel at the back of my tongue. Creaking rises far above, taut as a cable under load. Sap stink sharpens, a varnish bite braided with iron. The dented bin lid gleams where it shouldn't and slips away when I center it. The cooler air reverses like a tide to the back of my calves. I think the dark thickens. No. It steps closer, palm on glass without touch. I hold the rim and don't cross. The hush arrives like a placed lid. Breath thins, teeth cool. The hiss in my pocket collapses when I face the circle, swells when I angle away. My phone wakes on its own, gallery already open under my thumb, a new frame that never slid in. The circle, the gate of leaning trunks. Horizon low as if held by shorter arms. The time stutters. Adds a second, loses it, adds it back. The headlamp breathes brighter once. A branch snaps inches from my face. Clean. I jerk back. A resin filament skims my lip and clings. Bitter, metallic. I flinch from the taste and wipe with the back of my glove. The smear on the fabric smells like a toolbox rained on. Insects miss their cue. The quiet cinches like a belt. I lift the beam to eye height to keep light out of my mouth. The filament between twigs hums without wind, a faint, taut shiver. At my shins, cold moves in two narrow lanes and stops at bone. I inventory sound, strap tick, breath, grit in the right boot, and a half step late and close that lands once and chooses to stay as an idea. Hair on my legs lifts to nothing. A red blaze flashes wet on old bark, though I know it isn't. Beneath it, prints match mine until the right toe turns inward. Inside one, a pine needle aimed forward, stem back, a neat arrow for a gate I don't own. I try to count. 1, 2, 4, no, 3. Start again. The band tightens without moving. Under it, skin stipples as if pressed through mesh. The orbs hold position against wind I can see. I bring the phone up because not looking makes the silence larger. The screen warms my palm and shows my shoulder from behind, the circle centered. No figure fills the space my body requires. A dry shutter click taps from in front of me, as if a room exists in the trees. My beam finds bark. Nothing else. Smears muddle the glass where my thumb dragged. I fog the surface to wipe clean. The smear lifts in syrup lines and then settles into 5 dark ovals. Not petals, not smudges. Ovals with soft edges that cool into shape. Fingers. The orientation is wrong. The ovals point into the phone, toward the electronics, not out at me. I hold the device away. It heats my palm to match the print. I rub with my sleeve. Hard. The ovals don't travel. They don't blur. They hold and cool, tack choosing where to let go. Between the second and third finger, dust seeds a tiny web as if it caught on a ridge that is not there. I don't lower the phone into my beam. I keep the lights apart. The quiet drops harder. Short breaths now. Short sentences. Stop. Breathe. Twig. Cheek height. Snap. Neat as a pencil. Another resin hair brushes my mouth. Bitter green, then iron. I taste my own enamel. I step back 2 paces and 1 forward by mistake. Orders crossed in the knee. The forest takes both, the ground registering each as allowed. The watchband warms. Under the strap, a pulse I don't own answers once and goes still. I sweep the beam across the orbs. They refuse the light. They refuse me. The ankle draft leaves and returns from the opposite direction as if it chose a new route. I think I see breath in the dark. No, not breath. A cooler seam. The radio hiss swells when I turn my back to the circle, dims when I face it. Negative lighthouse. I use it because it pays distance. Wood complains high in the canopy, and the sap smell doubles. A long whistle, then a crack. A branch drops and rakes my shoulder. Fabric scrapes loud. No weight follows. The headlamp jolts on my forehead and flares. Orbs become rivets for one panicked swing. Insects return too loud for a second and settle. The skin under my collar prickles without heat. I thumb the watch without lifting it to my eyes. The crystal is cool, clear. Under the band, the stipple has arranged into a shallow, repeating pattern. No rash, a memory. The sense of being watched lives at wrist height, on the skin side. Not behind any tree. I do not give it a face. I will not. The circle slides where I intend to go, rolling into the line as quietly as a table felt being smoothed under a palm. The path corrugates, smooths, repeats itself. My knees begin to brace at the rhythm before it arrives. The dented lid shows left when I expect right, then ahead, bright with cold. I do not touch it. I will not have its temperature in my hand again. Metal rides my tongue. I drink anyway. Water tastes like a coin. The ordinary swallow steadies the throat. The hush returns without weight this time, like permission. I spend it. 3 careful steps past a shallow gate of leaning trunks. The hiss in my pocket swells, then thins, mapping my angles as if the phone learned to herd me. Behind me, a shutter click fires at a distance that makes no sense. Near made far, or far made near. The gallery does not update. The warmth in my pocket eases as if a hand let go. I don't check. My palm knows the print is still there, even if the glass decides to forget. It has pressed the idea into my skin. I toe the fine grit at the rim and let it tug. Gum film drag and release. Light flattens on the dark surface as if on water. The headlamp pulse does not repeat. Orbs remain exact. I set my pace to the trade I've learned. Hush buys meters. Hum costs them. I stop paying with long silences. I start paying with smaller ones, cupped in the hand. The first clear thing has happened. It sits with edges in the mind. 5 ovals on the underside of glass, fingers oriented inward, toward the meat that holds. The motif returned and chose its direction. I keep it where I can watch and not watch, a rule I do not argue. When the lid arrives, I move. When it lifts wrong, I wait. The circle intercepts intention. I intend elsewhere. The orbs brighten. No, my light just steadies. I take a line that never existed between 2 old bowls gone slack with age. The radio hiss rises when I turn away from the circle, dims when I face it. Consistent, patient, a tether I didn't want and now use. Resin sours to loam for 3 breaths and comes back with the copper thread drawn tight. Under the band, pressure kisses skin once more. A soft, thinking touch from the wrong side of the strap. I do not scratch. The watch face gleams dull as a coin. I keep it facing the world, not me. The ankle cold paces beside the bone like a companion, allowed to walk close on the inside edge of a path. We walk. The forest listens. I don't give it the sound it wants. The hiss fattens when I turn my back on the circle and thins to a hair when I face it. I walk by that sound the way people keep a shoreline in fog. Resin loads the air, then flips metallic, like the trees are oxidizing. An ankle-height draft keeps to my bones, patient as a dog at heel. Fatigue slicks thought. Salt sits on the tongue. The dark practices a steady, wrong patience and lets me feel it. Breadcrumb GPS wakes and draws my route as a triangle that keeps kissing the clearing's rim. No jump, no skip. Just three sides that shouldn't meet so often if I were leaving. I release my grip on the flashlight. My knuckles ache with their own small anger. The hiss swells to the left. A cheap compass I didn't ask for. Debt disguised as guidance. I follow anyway. A trunk gets a bright gouge from my flask cap. 50 meters later, I carve the same mark and count the trees between them. When the circle arrives again, the first scratch meets me at an angle I deserve if I'd looped. Logic holds. It's worse that way. Orbit closes without magic, only geometry. Sap sharpens in the throat. Hot glue braided with penny. 3 twigs cross into a careless arrow near a pair of fused bowls. I stash a stone below them to prove time. The orbs hold at shoulder height like pins in a chart. A lid of quiet drops for 5 counts. I walk through it like spending breath. The stone returns under my boot sooner than math allows. Saying it's fine helps. It isn't. Each hush that buys meters costs a frame. The gallery prints 1. The clearing from heel height. Horizon fallen like a child's eye. No figure uses the place my body needs. The dented lid gleams at the edge of the shot. When I lower the phone, the real lid waits 3 trunks away, polite as a landmark. My palms taste metal I'm not eating. Branches complain above, cable tight. The headlamp flickers once. The orbs ignore it. A hair-fine resin line has sealed to my jacket's seam. When I lift it, the thread snaps and paints a tack on my glove that fabric won't take. Bitter green rides the teeth. The ankle draft slides to the back of my calves and waits as if a leash slackened. Wider arc. I press between bowls that have sloughed bark like old skin. Leaves rasp, briars nip, denim stings, explicit world-making receipts. Noise is currency. I spend it on purpose. Zipper taps, breath through teeth, then save a clean hush to pay later. The forest removes sound gently, like I've learned its cue. The trade works. Not much. Enough. Fatigue trickles down the spine in countable tremors. 1, 2, 4, no. 3. The mouth won't hold numbers in order. Water burns a path. The flask clinks a small report that steadies me more than it should. Heat gathers under the watchband to a point and spreads like a hand learning my wrist from the wrong side. The crystal stays cool. I keep it facing out. I commit to a stand of straight trunks beyond the circle and let that thought be rope. Roots corrugate underfoot, ribs beneath thin flesh, then give to fine grit at the rim. A toe tests. Gum film drag. Release. The body wants straight. The rule says skirt. Teeth cool in the hush. Breath shortens and returns with a scrape I recognize as mine. Something opens and shuts ahead. Too neat for lungs, too flat for throat. Mouths felt in earth, not seen. The phone's hiss swells when I angle away, content like a cat reoccupying a chair. I think I see a shoulder at the line of my light. No. Lichen in an arc. A leaf chooses a side and lies still. The watchband warms once and cools. Insect tone refuses me by half a beat. My steps chase an echo that won't keep time. The dented lid returns and refuses to be somewhere else. Corner right, then ahead, then nested in brush where a service track ought to be. One last touch to prove agency. Cold burns precise. My palm names the degree and keeps it like trivia. A plan I dislike becomes necessary. Travel on the edges of quiet, not the center. Pay with the small coins, fabric whisper, zipper tick, scuff, hoard the long hush for turns. Shorter strides in silence buy more honest meters than stillness. The forest accepts, sells me 3 trees and demands interest later. I'll owe. I already do. Another frame appears uninvited. The circle, the gate of leaning trunks. A shadow stripe across the dirt that matches my headlamp shape but not my angle. I rake light across bark until grain becomes all the faces I refuse to give a name. The ankle draft strokes the sock line and pauses like a hand deciding whether to knock. Loam gives underfoot and breathes rot sweet, a mercy against metal. Relief makes me fast. Brush answers with bristle and scratch. Grit grinds between molars. Cuffs soak and chill. Explicit marks me because it can. The uncanny keeps the ledger. Orbs steady, hiss obedient. Circle adjusting to intercept intention, like felt smoothed under a palm. Memory is rope with 2 strands left. The trailhead's dust and coolant smell. The car fan ticking a minute after the key. I pull it anyway. The forest grants a straight run and asks a longer hush. Tax paid. 3 orbs now, exact at shoulder height, like rivets on a template. The wind moves the canopy. It refuses to touch the ground. Laces loosened to stop ankle bite buys 30 seconds of ordinary motion. Ritual convinces knees they're not being negotiated with. Throat rasps. I drink and the water is coin on the tongue. Breadcrumbs resolve, the triangle closes, the line undoes itself, then resolves again. I tell myself I imagined the reversal. No. Pixels rewound. I watched them. 3 twigs crossed appear ahead from a new approach. Arrow now pointing cleanly toward the clearing. Message received. I scatter them with my boot and feel childish. Above, a tick like a cooling engine arrives where no road can live. The headlamp doesn't brighten. It grows heavy, as if a palm found my brow and pressed. Standing still helps me shed that touch. A moth hits the lens, scribbles light, falls audible to leaf. Ordinary returns borders to my body. Anger sparks at a bearable size. I let it live under the ribs and do work. The hiss grows to my left. I buy the hint and take it to the only pay window that exists here. Explicit wrong lands within breath. A limb whistles, skims my shoulder, peels cloth, draws a line of heat on skin. Weight doesn't follow. No bruises, no crash, just a scuff of sap like varnish freshened. Instinct tilts the beam upward. The canopy gives me only tension and black. The orbs never blink. I lower the light to the work in front of me. Metal returns to the mouth. I drink until I cough. Hush arrives, set rather than dropped. I spend 6 steps from it and reach a double gate of trunks, symmetrical in a way the forest hasn't been. Beyond, the dirt is darker, glazed. Fine grit on the rim clings, lets go, repeats. An insistence that never quite becomes pull. I keep to leaf. Heat assembles under the strap. Not pain, not warning, attention. A fingernail taps the crystal. It holds clean. The pressure in the band is the size and shape of a hand thinking. I don't lift it to my eyes. The rule for hands here is set. I won't offer new surfaces. The ankle draft paces me like a thing that has learned my length of step. I try the line I hate most. Straight to the circle until I can count bark grains, then feather the edge, then peel away when the hiss fattens. The breadcrumb triangle obeys no romance. It stays a triangle rubbing the same rim. The trap is obvious now. This place hands back the shapes you bring it, closes your geometry the way a mouth closes on a cup. A low tone threads the leaves, not word or whine, wire bowed once. It hangs in the ear and refuses exit. The hiss wobbles under it, confuses my map, then steadies. Facing away fattens it, facing in thins it. Negative lighthouse. I let a tool I hate guide me. Anger reduces the fear to something human-sized and useful. Noise becomes money again. I spend small change in a rush. Zipper ticks, boot scuffs, throat clearing, then bank 3 beats of silence for the next turn. The forest pays me trunk counts I can verify against the gouges I made. One arrives late enough to be a win, rented, not owned. The debt ledger doesn't forgive. It just keeps neat lines. That damned lid waits where a spur would meet a main line if this were a park. I refuse to touch it, and it tips a fraction toward me, balances, settles. Explicit exacts a price. A thin cut on my thumb from grit I can't name. Bark raises a welt at the wrist. Proof of body helps, even if it's nothing I can show. The uncanny clocks that the lid bowed in, not out. A brightness swells in the gallery thumbnail, though I don't open it. The image grows when I let it. The clearing again. Horizon lower. Dented lid centered as if it matters most. Across the lower edge, 5 faint ovals arc in gloss. Orientation is all that counts. They face inward. I don't wipe. I don't look long. I lock the screen and let the print cool in my pocket. Legs tremble. Mouth dries. Those are mine. I take their ordinariness as leverage and aim for a pressure memory of a road. The sound that isn't here and never was tonight. The hiss swells, sweet with permission. The next quiet lands like an agreement rather than a theft. I step through at the body's count, not the mouth's. Orbs hold like posts around a job site. Roots, loam, grit, the fine rim. Nothing changes except intention. The circle meets my line because it always will. I accept that and stop giving it shapes to close. When I turn right, the hiss fattens. When I face in, it disappears. The watchband cools from attention to thought. The ankle draft keeps pace. Shoulders ache. Jaw clicks on sand. Trapped is a word, not a door. Lost is a fact, not a sentence. I keep moving inside the logic the forest insists on, and it listens the way a room listens after lights out. The price is silence. I pay in coins I can still count. The hiss fattens when I turn from the circle and thins to thread when I face it. I walk by that sound because it pays, not because I trust it. Resin sits sweet, then flips metallic, as if the trees oxidize in my mouth. An ankle-height draft keeps to bone, patient as a low animal. Under the watchband, pressure gathers like a thought that never finishes, then settles, then returns. The circle rolls into whatever line I intend and waits there, unhurried. Orbs hang milk pale at shoulder height, pinned against wind that refuses to touch the ground. I count to keep shape. 1, 2, 3, 5, no, 4. The mistake chills the tongue and dissolves. The headlamp's elastic clicks like a small tether I pretend is mine. I spend short hushes like coins, buy 3 steps, then make noise to earn the next angle. The lid sets lightly, and I move inside it. Insects cut out with obedient neatness. A cooler seam lifts from ankles to knee and stops, tied against hinge. In my pocket, the phone warms in a palm shape I don't supply. The radio hiss leans left. I take the hint and cost myself faith. Brush thickens toward a pair of straight trunks I have been bribing closer for an hour. Briars rake denim. A thorn writes a neat sting along the calf. Sap threads touch my jacket seam and web. The snap leaves tack on the glove that fabric won't take. Bitter green rides the teeth. The hiss swells again to the right. Answer and debt are the same size here. The dented lid waits where a spur would meet a road if this place had roads at night. I do not touch it. My palm still remembers its degree of cold. I inventory sound. Zipper tick, breath, grit in the right boot. No half-step companion. Not yet. Under the band, warmth pools and refuses to mix with the ankle cold. 2 weather layers in one body. A dry shutter click lands behind my ear, near as a room I haven't entered. I don't lift the phone. The gallery takes its tax every time I pay distance. Let it take. I keep the beam on bark and feel the hiss lean forward into the air with something else braided through it. Hot dust, faint coolant, that fan-tick heat that belongs to cars and not trees. The price matches the promise. Hush arrives heavier, not dropped, but applied. I shut my mouth and spend the silence I have left. Insects vanish to stitch. The headlamp brightens once and flattens as if a hand cupped it. Teeth cool. The ankle seam divides into twin lanes and holds there. Under the strap, a pulse I don't own answers once, then twice. Attention, not heart. The clearing presents itself between the straight trunks, like a shallow bowl with a dark bottom. Every rule I've learned points through, and every reason I have wants around. The hiss empties to nothing when I face the center, grows when I angle away. A rule is a door with a price. I wait for the longest stillness I've felt. Long enough to think. Don't think. Move. The lid drops hard. Breath stops. Step. Grit whispers under the sole. Step. Resin floods the mouth, battery bright and sour. Step. Heel finds adhesion where there should be none and peels loose with a soft kiss. Short sentences are bridges you can throw by hand. Don't count wrong. Don't look down. Keep the seam. Halfway, a branch lashes at thigh height and draws a hot, exact line under cloth. No weight follows. A filament of sap kisses the lip and holds. Bitter, metallic. I swallow around it and keep my jaw closed so silence stays currency. The beam thins, as if pushed through a throat. Orbs hold their posts. A shutter click taps ahead. Latch settling. Under the band, something nearly turns my wrist to meet the face. It doesn't. It thinks at skin's edge until the sense of being held from the wrong side grows delicate and specific. I lift nothing. I keep the crystal aimed outward. In the headlamp's fringe, the watch face fogs, clears, and leaves 3 narrow crescents briefly visible, cooling toward the inward curve. The border wears thickness instead of a line. Shin air warms a degree you can name. Grit shifts from fine to powder and back like sifted flour. Insects hold their breath with mine. The lid's edge crosses scalp to collar. Lightweight, exact. And in the inch where pressure eases, the forest lets go of me and keeps something I can't inventory. Noise returns wrong. Too many, too fast, a crowd after a speech, and then corrects. I step onto leaf litter that crackles louder than it deserves, a slap that feels merciful. The hiss comes back as a narrow thread that fattens downhill. Dust and coolant arrive as actual air, not memory. I think thank you, no. My mouth is shut. I keep it shut. The path ahead consents. Roots occur in a sequence my feet can predict. The first gouge I cut in a trunk arrives where math says it should. The second takes longer, and that honesty feels like water. The orbs dim one by one like screws backing out of a panel. The ankle cold loosens bone by bone until shins are only shins again. Brush changes to sapling, then thins. Underfoot, flatter stones string together as if tires once argued here. Leaf mash smooths and grows regular. When the canopy moves, the ground accepts the motion instead of hoarding it. The hiss steadies to a small radio, nothing that might be signal or hope. I don't reward it with belief. I take the path it marks. At a bend, the dented lid sits where day would have it. Corner of a spur where a trash bin ought to live. I let it be metal. The car's reflectors mine my headlamp from a distance where red loses its heat and becomes two dull embers. Air adds a pepper of gravel dust and a faint sweetness of warm plastic left to cool. Under the strap, warmth drains to patience. Pressure doesn't vanish. It behaves. Knees speak in their own hinge language and jaw clicks on grit. The world with edges resumes all claims. Salt tongue, tired calves, fabric rasp and settle. The hiss falls away into background, the way a refrigerator can define a room and then stop being in it. Keys live where I left them. Pocket, cold at edges, too sharp. My hand counts 2 keys and wants to count 3, no. 2, and a fob that never feels like a key. I work the ring without looking. The headlamp pulls the car out of dark, panel by panel, dusty fender, dried mud lip, the scuff I gave it a week ago. Proof that time elsewhere still applied here. At the door, hush visits again. Thin, intentional, as if the forest put one fingertip on the sill to study differences. The handle is colder than the night by an old, familiar degree. Inside, something ticks. Plastic settling. A fan that used to run. Small heat noises cars keep after you leave them. It should be impossible. It isn't. Not here. I pull. The seal unsticks with a soft kiss. Warm cabin air ghosts out, carrying a resin metal tang thinner than rumor but present. The beam finds a dash that is only a dash, a wheel that is only wheel. I lower my pack into the footwell because hands want to put weight down where rules have less reach. When I step back to sit, the left boot drags and writes a bright mark through gravel. A hair-fine resin thread spans between the lace aglet and a pale stone, taut, trembling without wind, violin hair between notes. I pinch with glove. It yields without sound and paints a tack that smells like pine and iron. The broken ends shine, one on stone, one on lace. I wipe glove to jacket. Nothing transfers, only memory takes. The ankle cold lifts away entirely. Companion dismissed. In the cabin, the plastic tick happens twice, then commits to silence. I sit, eyes still down, key teeth cold against thumb, hands set on thighs like I am waiting my turn at an ordinary office. The pressure under the strap recedes to a thought that doesn't need to be said aloud. The watch face catches a sliver of beam and offers back a dull coin. I decline. The phone warms at the thigh like a pocket learns a palm. I keep my gaze level with the steering column and let the air reassemble its non-forest parts. Behind the hinge, the black is made of trees again, not of close rooms. The car makes car noises. Fabric creak, belt tongue tick, seat foam settling an inch. Gravel shifts under a slow weight I can name me. When I reach to pull the door closer, a single grain skates and clicks, and the broken filament's end lifts, lowers, lifts again, a metronome no one asked for. I close to latch and leave the seal unmade, as if space needs a seam to breathe through. The headlamp leaves a pale eclipse on the windshield that I refuse to chase. Hot dust smell unwinds into regular air and halts shy of clean. On my wrist, an outline where the band sat refuses to fade, like a place pressed from inside that still remembers the shape of a hand. A relay in the dash remembers power with a polite click and declines to engage. In the brief quiet that follows, the night moves around the cabin like a small animal testing corners. Pebble settles, a mat scuffs, a lace holds its tack. I hear myself think the road name I want, and then hear the mind correct it to one older. No. The first was right. I keep my eyes down and wait. The hiss is gone now, or it has become what every silence becomes when doors are involved. Expected. The watch crystal cools plain. No crescents show in the fringe. Heat where the band lived fades toward neutral. On the floor mat, a single grain of grit keeps to the lace, refuses to drop, and feels in the beam's edge, very slightly wet. I lift my hand from my knee. The skin under the strap shines faintly, not damp, not dry, as if a touch happened there from the wrong side and took its time letting go. The key teeth press a pattern into thumb pad. When I roll them away, the marks remain for a count. 1, 2, 4. No. 3. I let the count sit and do not correct it. Outside, a small movement puts a whisper through leaves that stands out because it is honest wind. A cooler draft exists under the door I have not sealed, ankle height, a leftover lane of air that refuses to be cancelled by the car. It doesn't touch me. It lives there, measuring. I let it exist. I listen for what I brought with me and do not lift my eyes. The cabin holds still like a held breath. Dust-warm air gathers around the steering column. A thin draft lives under the unsealed door at my ankles, measuring without touch. The headlamp leaves a pale eclipse on the windshield I refuse to chase. The forest is behind the hinge again. The phone sits hot against my leg, the exact size of a palm that isn't here. Silence stops being background and turns deliberate. My breath fogs the glass, clears too cleanly. A metallic resin tang brightens. On the inside surface, 5 dark ovals cool into shape, ridgeless and wet, choosing where to let go. The broken filament on my lace trembles. A relay clicks and refuses. Under the strap, skin feels watched from within. Sap handprint on the windshield, facing inward.